Welcome back to the Mid-Year Mitch YouTube channel. Today's episode, we're finishing up the Birdcage on the split window. I'm going to show you some tips on how to make some custom patterns and patch panels, so be sure to stick around. I also wanted to thank you guys for purchasing the windshield spacers. These have sold really well, and if you haven't seen them and you want to get some, go over to the website and get them. I also wanted to thank you guys for all the support in my last video. I normally don't go with like a clickbait or thumbnail or title that's clickbaity, but in that last video I did, because I wanted a lot of people to see it. Don't worry, I'm not going to quit YouTube. I just had to kind of establish some boundaries before the channel continues to grow and things get out of hand. So I really appreciate the support again, and check out the website for more information on these and some high quality merchandise. So we're about wrapped up on this Birdcage. One of the first things I want to do is pull the doors off because, well, we don't need them anymore. But we have to fix some rust up here. This front section is actually pretty solid, but pretty much from here, you can see all these big holes, pretty much back to here needs to be replaced. Pretty simple patch, but I'm going to show you some techniques that you can use for more complicated patches. And we also need to go through, grind down all of our welds, fill any pinholes that we have. There's some dents up here we have to work out. We're going to do a final pass over this entire Birdcage to make sure it's in good shape, because this is our last chance to really fix anything. We're going to check to make sure, because this car was wrecked, we're going to go through with some tools, either a screwdriver or a panel separator, and make sure that all of our spot welds are still held solid. I'm a little curious to see if these ones are, this panel wasn't attached very well on that side. So we're going to go through and check and make sure everything's solid. Whenever I start my Birdcage rust repair, the first thing I do is analyze the part to see what kind of condition it's in, how far do I have to take the patch, and then I also come in here and try to figure out exactly what this part does. You always want to be accurate with making your patch pieces, and you want to make sure they're as close to the original part as you can, but that's not always possible. Sometimes the bends are hard to recreate, or you have to simplify the part a little bit to make it work. But in this case, we need to make this top panel here, which, if you think about the roll of this panel, a bonding strip covers this whole surface, and then the roof skin glues on top of that. So the height of this is very important, because if this is too high, the roof will sit above the door top. There's not a lot you can do. The roof skin is very, very thin, and the bonding strips really aren't that thick either. So you might run into some issues there. If you make it too low, then you know you can build that up on the bonding strip, but you're getting it away from its original design intent, which you really don't want to do. If you're making this whole piece, for example, this edge isn't as critical as this edge, but this edge has some screw holes here. It holds a piece of rubber trim that goes here that seals up against the door. So this area is not as important. If this is off, you know, like a 16th, or if it's tilted a little bit, you want to get it as close as you can, but it doesn't have to be as perfect as this one. And this surface back here really doesn't matter all that much. It just needs to be close to the right angle to make, or at least the right length, to make sure that this piece on top isn't at a weird angle. But this isn't as important. I've had to make this whole piece on the Misfit, and I think I did a pretty good job with recreating it. But this section is fairly straight. It's got a little bit of a curve to it, but it's fairly straight. So whenever you're making a template like this, you could either go for some cardboard from your favorite cereal. I like using stuff that's non-corrugated because it's just easier to work with, it bends, and it's easier to cut, and it's more accurate. That's really good for gussets or flat pieces, or like little patches at the bottom of the Birdcage. But for more complicated shapes, not that this is really complicated, like this tape template that I made up for the flange over here, you can see that I have some lines drawn on it, and I have this bent up here. This piece had some shape to it. It's been laying out for a while, but it had some shape to it. And that's really useful when you're making complicated pieces like on this Birdcage, because this will show you a more three-dimensional representation of what you're working with. Where this is mainly going to be two-dimensional, you really can't bend it or get shape in it. Where you can lay this tape over a bowl, you pull the tape off and it'll hold that shape. Then if you go to cut it out of metal, you'll lay it down and you'll see it standing up. You can put some slits in it and it'll lay flat, and that will tell you where you need to shrink or stretch your material to make it work. So tape gives you a good outline of how to do that. So I did a lot of work since we last checked in. We have this patch welded in, and I'll drill all these holes for the bonding strips once we actually put the bonding strips on. That's no big deal. And I worked on grinding down and blending the welds all over the cage. You know, we put rockers on this thing. We put new gutters in it. I find it's easier to do the grinding and finish welding whenever this is on its back, just so I'm not welding and grinding upside down. Did some more finish work in here. It's looking pretty good, but I have to grind a little bit here. And then I just welded all these up. Just put a spot weld every inch or so. So that's nice and strong. I had the welder set up real nice, so it shouldn't take much grinding to knock all these down. So I'm gonna do one last pass with that, and then I'm gonna fix any little dents that we have. And there's some dents back here. We're gonna work all those out. So went around the birdcage and just fixed some of the dents that were in it. So that's repaired. And I fixed these. This part of the hinge pillar generally gets messed up whenever you open the door and you just let it hang out and max out. These get bent over time. So I put them back where they're supposed to be. Just, we really don't want the door, you know, to go further than it needs to. I ground all these welds down up front, and I did some more pounding over here. So this birdcage is done. I'll probably give it one last look before we load it up. Monday, I'm gonna get this thing loaded up in the truck, take it out to get it blasted and powder coated, and then, you know, this is it for birdcage content on this car. This one is done, and I need to do a lot of cleaning up in the shop because we need to start doing some floor pan repairs. We need to start working on the rear clip and whatever other fiberglass repairs we need to do. So that'll be in next week's video. Wednesday's video, I'll probably show you guys when I'm taking this to the powder coater, and I'll introduce you to the new shop truck. It'll eventually be turned into Jerry the COE. So that'll all be next week. I have a lot of cleaning to do, and we need to get this car, the 67, ready to be shipped. So I'll probably switch the 67 onto this chassis, and then I'll put this birdcage on the Roadster shop chassis, and we'll build it on there. And over here, we've got a fresh delivery from Silver Sport Transmissions. So we're going to be putting this transmission in the 65 Roadster, but I'm going to use this transmission to as a mock-up. I'm going to build like a rough case off of it. I'll show you that in another video. But we're going to use that to mock up the floor in this car to see where we have to make adjustments, and it's probably right where that hole is cut, actually, that we may need to do some work. And in the front of the tunnel here, it's all screwed up. So we're going to do some mocking up coming up soon, and I'll start making some of those little fiberglass tunnel pieces I was telling you guys about. So that's going to do it for Birdcage stuff on this, but we still have plenty of work to do on this car. But once we start to do some fiberglass work, it'll really start to look like something. And then once again, we'll have a split window and a 67 in here and not just a pile of parts. I wanted to give a couple more tips that I forgot to record earlier. Whenever I'm doing birdcage repair, I always try to match the metal thickness of my patch to the original piece. And I have a little Eastwood metal thickness gauge, which I'll put a picture up here. I bought that whenever I first started doing birdcage repair, and the tool works awesome. It's just basically just a quick like go no-go gauge for all the different thicknesses of metal. The part I patched on the Birdcage was 18 gauge. I used 17 gauge, which is just a little bit thicker. I always try to go a little thicker than thinner, just to add a little extra strength. And 17 is all I had. Most of the Birdcage is 18. The rockers, the latch pillars, and most of the hinge pillars are a little bit thicker. I believe they're either 14 or 16 gauge. So just keep that in mind, but get one of those gauges if you're going to do some of this repair work. It's really handy to have for any kind of fabrication. It just helps you set up your welder really quick. I mentioned this in the last video, but I made 2 Facebook groups. One is for C2 Corvette Roadster Shop Spec 7 chassis swaps. The other one is for C2 Corvette fiberglass and birdcage repair. So those groups have been growing. They've been doing well. So if you want to get some more detailed information about how to do these types of projects or share your own project, be sure to head over to those, and I appreciate your guys' support there. But that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. The next time you see this Birdcage, it'll be in a nice fresh coat of powder coating, and then we'll be putting some fiberglass on it. So I got a lot of work to do, and I'll catch you guys later.